Welcome to Scott Holm Podcast. Back here on a late April Tuesday evening, talking all things Houston Cougars. We got in-season stuff to talk about, guys. We have a rare coaching change to talk about here, so we'll have that there at the top. We have at least one Cougar in the NFL draft, and got some current sports stuff to talk about, and a number of y'all's questions to kick around about everything going on with the Houston Cougars. Dustin, you are back with us. The trio of fellas is back tonight. How are you doing, friend?
Doing well. Smirking a little bit at least one Cougar in the NFL draft. I think we can at most one Cougar in the NFL draft too. But no, excited to be talking about a bunch of stuff with you guys. I mean, and certainly we've been banging the drum for some of the underperforming coaches to be replaced, and I don't think we necessarily had this one as the first one on our bingo card, but interesting, and always get that fun. Who could it be? It could be anybody. It could be a boat situation. So excited to be talking Cougar sports and looking forward to the new who we get for the new tennis coach.
Bobby, how you doing, friend?
Good, man. It was kind of a busy day work wise, and a lot of the stuff that I don't like to do in my job was all concentrated in one day. So I'm ready to talk Cougar sports and call it a day in terms of that. So
we love to hear it. So of course, got mentioned at the top, our good friends at Charlie Hustle, charliehustle.com on the World Wide Web. I just came home from work, so I am only rocking business casual, but Dustin is the one of the three of us that got the memo. He is rocking I believe it's the Houston Cougar basketball with the Shasta about to throw down what I'm sure is going to be an absolute 10 out of 10 dunk. If you like that design and countless other Cougar designs, you should go over to charliehustle.com. Use our promo code Pawd15. Thanks to our good friend and graphic designer, Bill. If you are watching this podcast, we know those of you like to watch us. We're on the YouTubes. Right below me, you can see our promo code Pawd15, P-A-W-D, like Podcast 15. That's going to save 15% on an absolutely fantastic collection they have over there of Cougar wearables, t-shirts, crew necks, hoodies. Even though we were very much in the t-shirt season, you can at least get a look ahead, I guess, at your fall and winter selection there as well. But a lot of really awesome tees there. Always deals going on there, but you can get the everyday deal of saving 15% by using our promo code PAWD15. That's Pod15. And please support our friends at Charlie Hustle, charliehustle.com. I'm going to also mention our Patreon, patreon.com/SH podcast. If you like what you do, if you want to put a little money behind the weekly Houston Cougar podcast that we do here during the season, please go to patreon.com/SH podcast. As little as 16 cents a day, you can support the work that Dustin, Bobby, and myself do on a weekly basis. And of course, check out our friends at the 1012 Network, at TEN12 Network, wherever you social media, and the 1012 podcast. Put it in your ears, subscribe wherever you get podcasts as well. And don't do this at the top very often, but I'm going to mention it. Please, it is free to do so. If you don't want to support our show financially, that's fine. Understand. $5. That's not very much, but we appreciate those of you, a greater number than we ever expected, who do that. But if that's not in your ability to do so, that's fine. If you like what we do on a regular basis, please give us a free 99 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. Spotify, Apple. I'm sure there are other places that do it that I have not bothered to commit to memory for this part of the segment, but we really do appreciate those of you that have given us the 5-star review, and would really like those of you that listen to us on a regular basis to consider doing that wherever you put podcasts in your ears. You mentioned it, Dustin. I mentioned it, I think, at the top as well. We have a coaching change. And while I think we take no pleasure in anyone losing their job, it's a tough thing. I think a lot of us out there as adults have experienced the layoff or however you lose a job. Not pleasant. Not something I necessarily wish on anyone, but I think something that's probably going to be necessary for a few underperforming programs, and what we're about to talk about, the Cougar tennis program, as on Monday, U of H announced that Helena Bezovic, who had just completed her 6th year as the head coach of the Cougar tennis program, would not be returning to lead the program. Quick summary, Bezovic replaced Courtney Steinbach, who followed previous athletic director Hunter Yurchek to Arkansas after a 4-year stint as head coach at McNeese. Assistant stints previously at Penn State and Mizzou. Dustin, it's been the longest since you've been on this show, so I will ask you first, scale of 1 to 10, what was your surprise that U of H finally did make a move of some kind? And generally, where would you like the program to go from here? And obviously, any other thoughts you have on Cougar tennis specifically?
Yeah, I would say my level of surprise was maybe like a 3 or 4 on the 1 to 10 scale. I mean, and even only that high because it's been so infrequent that we've seen Chris Pesman make any moves. This is only the second, coaching change that has not been brought about by NCAA sanctions, and the first in a non-revenue sport. We'd kind of said it just seemed like he was never ever going to let any of the non-revenue sports coaches go for any reason. But admittedly hadn't looked up Helena Bezovic's contract status in a while, or don't know if I would have been able to easily find that. Those aren't always easy to grab right away. But I mean, you went 0-13 in the Big 12. You went 2-19 overall. You do that in a contract year, you're probably not going to get your contract renewed. That's generally, any level of sports. That's usually that's how that goes. And it wasn't, and kind of like I said, it wasn't just the 0-13 in Big 12 play, which would have been bad enough on its own. But just going 2-6 in non-conference, losing to multiple teams that Houston had beaten before in non-conference with the same essentially the same roster like last year. It was just showing, when you have that much of your roster coming back, you're supposed to take another step forward. You're not supposed to backslide in this tennis program. Backslid with basically everybody back. And when you do that, and the coach has kind of been here for a number of years, like I said, your contract year's up. You're 2-19. You got to go. So I think worth pointing out that Houston is pretty lacking facilities wise in the sport of tennis. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see who Houston can even attract at this position. Maybe the Big 12 funding coming in means that we're finally going to get just a little sprinkling of money, because I think it's a sport where even a little sprinkling of money could probably go a long way. So I'm curious to see, if Houston is kind of willing to sprinkle a little bit of money on tennis. To me, that question, is Houston going to spend even a little bit of money on tennis going forward, is more important than who the next coach is. Right, if you're willing to spend a little bit of money on tennis to be successful, then you can find a good coach. If you're not, then whoever you bring in probably isn't going to be too successful. So, admittedly, Sam, I'm making this. I can say this because I know you actually did do this. I did not go to all the hassle of googling, good head coaches of G5 programs or assistants of top programs in the state to see who the candidates were. But like I said, I think regardless of who it is, it's got to be someone hopefully coming into the administration, and hopefully when they're interviewing people, they're having people kind of coming in and going, hey, I'm interested in the position. I like being in the city of Houston. I like the Big 12, but we got to probably do a little bit of work in terms of our facilities.
Yeah, I would say I agree with everything that you're saying. I think my 1 to 10, I was actually probably a 6 or a 7. I think had I known, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh yeah, I know all the contract status of all of our coaches in every single sport. Had I known it was going to, it was her final year of her contract, maybe I'd be at the 3 or the 4. But when I first heard it, I was like, wait, we're making a move in a non-revenue sport? Wait a minute. And so there was the shock in that, not necessarily when you look at the statistics or the where we stood in Big 12 play and the record and everything in the year. So it doesn't surprise me on that end. I'm probably at the 3 or the 4. But when I first saw it, when Sam first sent it in the group text, I was kind of like, whoa, wait a minute. We're moving on from a coach. And I think I sent to you guys, if you were telling me that we had an underperforming coach and we were going to let one of them walk, tennis probably would have been the one that I would have been the most surprised for, because this coach has shown at least a little bit of something in the past. And it's clear that the step up in competition was a lot, obviously. And we did lose to teams, to your point, Dustin, that we had beat just last year. And so I was kind of a little shocked in the fact that we let her go. But then when I found out it was the end of the contract, I was like, well, you don't really got to buy her out or do anything like that. So,
yeah, under Bezovic, this program, at least in the AAC years, this was generally middle of the conference standings, but never really that competitive against the top end of the AAC or better non-conference opponents kind of team. And I don't think we had really ambitious expectations for a first season in a much tougher Big 12. But to your guys' point, you weren't competitive enough against non-conference opponents where you're beating previously, and you weren't competitive enough in the few winnable conference matches you had on the schedule. Cincy and Iowa State, I think, chief among them. Not to mention, this is I think you said it, Dustin, was a veteran roster that returned most of experienced players. I think a change in leadership was justified just based on the current season's results. But it's not like Bezovic, an experienced coach and former high-level college player, didn't know tennis. I think the biggest underlying reason U of H was the worst Big 12 tennis program this past season, hasn't had any true, consistent, successful runs over its history, has more to do with resources and priorities in this athletic department. The program had a brief but very successful run about 10 years ago under Patrick Sullivan, which absolutely showed it can be done with Cougar tennis, but he left to be an assistant at A&M, which tells you, at least at that time, U of H probably wasn't doing what it needed to do to resource that program properly. I think I talked about it last episode. There isn't really an easy mechanism right now to even give to the tennis program, never mind anything that gives potential donors an idea of what a big impact that I would imagine even a moderate-sized donation would do for Cougar tennis, or just some cool team-specific incentives to engage a fan base that I'm sure has a non-zero number of people who are recreational tennis or racket sport players, but maybe don't follow the college tennis game. I mean, I think bottom line, changing leadership and, changing the resources given to the tennis program, you're going to have to, it has to be more than just changing leadership. If you keep the program resources as they are right now and only change, the head coach and assistant coach overseeing the program, then you're not going to see anything different from what you saw this year appreciably. Maybe a win or two and fewer embarrassing non-conference losses, but you're going to be a bottom tier Big 12 team unless something bigger than program leadership changes. So, guys, I mentioned in our group chat, I have a short list of candidates that I would want for the job. This is not sourced. This is not me saying, oh, I know these 5 are, Chris Pesman's first calls to make, but you interested in hearing my list?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, let's go.
So the first couple names I think would be pretty incredible pulls, but not unrealistic. I'm not saying, we could pull Oklahoma State's head coach. Like I think every name on this list is at least semi-realistic for the U of H job. It is, as you imagine, a mixture of smaller conference head coaches and assistants at better programs in this region. The first one, I think, my first 2 are the most ambitious. My first one, Jaime Sanchez Cañamares. He's the associate head coach at Oklahoma State. Again, we'll reiterate, these first 2 names very much on the ambitious side. He's the number 2 in charge of the current top-ranked women's college tennis program, so good chance he could be picky about his next landing spot as a head coach. Fairly young, was playing as recently as 2015, led D2 power Emory-Riddle to back-to-back national runner-ups as a player. Coached high-level junior players, has spent a good deal of time at Oklahoma State, but also had stints at Florida State and Nebraska. In his time at OSU, he's consistently helped that program build into a national power, has coached a number of individual all Big 12 performers as well. Would be a home run hire even as a fairly young guy, even as a first-time head coach. Similar profile as my second coach, Christina Sanchez Quintanar. She's an assistant coach at UT Austin, has spent this past season as an assistant coach for a top 10 program, was a head coach for 2 seasons in Arkansas prior to that. Had a winning record overall and an SEC player her first season. Actually replaced someone I mentioned a little bit ago, former U of H head coach Courtney Steinbach at Arkansas. But I mean, I think the biggest reason she's on my list is from her time at UCF, where from 2017 to 21, she was the assistant coach there. She was the 2019 USTA National Assistant Coach of the Year, helped lead the Knights to back-to-back AAC team titles. Her final 2 seasons, was part of a program that went to the Sweet 16 in 2019. It was a top 10 overall seed in that tournament. I think this one is the biggest long shot because she recently voluntarily left a head coaching job to be an assistant and is currently working for her college head coach at UT. And U of H is a hard job. But if you were asking me who out there, if properly resourced, is the best coach in U of H's footprint who can build a consistent winner here, I think it's Sanchez Quintanar. You also have Ricky Rojas, who's the director of tennis, previous longtime women's head coach at East Tennessee State, has taken the Lady Bucks to back-to-back NCAA tournaments. They're actually facing Duke on Friday at the Knoxville Regional. Has a total of 3 NCAA appearances since becoming the women's head coach there. Before this season was named their director of tennis, so he's actually currently overseeing their men's and women's programs, who both went undefeated against Southern Conference opponents, are both going to the NCAAs. Was also an assistant player for the TSU program, which is super successful for a smaller college program. The guy can get good international players to Johnson City, Tennessee. I think he could do it to Houston. That's my pitch here. I think the drawback is we're talking about somebody who has spent his entire college coaching and playing career at ETSU. He might be pretty happy there. And I think you ask questions about somebody whose experience is suited to one specific school. It hasn't had a variety of different places. But again, if he could do it at ETSU, I think he could do it here. But maybe he wants a new challenge. Maybe he's tantalized by the, I think the prospect of building, a Big 12 program in an international city. Maybe 2 or 3 of his players want to prove themselves in the Big 12. Worst ideas out there. 2 more candidates, associate head coach of Texas Tech currently, Danny Nasser. She's the youngest of all the candidates I'm talking about here. Her college career actually ended during our second season as a podcast. She was a standout player to Oregon, but as the Lady Raiders have gone to the NCAAs both years, she's been the assistant coach in Lubbock. She's also been an assistant at Gonzaga and Notre Dame. Tech's the top 25 team. If Nasser can recruit good players to Lubbock, is it crazy to say she could do it to Houston? And I would say, unlike a couple of the candidates here, she doesn't have extensive ties to Lubbock beyond these 2 years. Like, she might be willing to take on the challenge of being a first-time head coach. I think my most out of the box of the 5, the last one I mentioned, is Chad Berryhill, the current head coach at Emory-Riddle. Like Nasser, big gamble, but for very different reasons. He's only in his first year at Emory-Riddle, who are the current number 5 D2 program, but has won 400 matches or over 400 matches in his career, all below the D1 level. That's the gamble here, but won a JUCO national title, has won a bunch of matches at multiple D2 programs, does have several years as a D1 assistant from his time at UCF as their assistant coach and recruiting coordinator, has won the ITA D2 Women's Coach of the Year multiple times. The guy's won everywhere he's been and could be itching to run a program, at the D1 level. So it's a gamble, like I said, but one I'd definitely be comfortable with U of H making. So no guarantee that any of those candidates end up in the mix for this job, and there are plenty of good candidates U of H could hire that aren't on that short list, but those 5 would be my first calls if I was in charge of making that hire. I mean, the tournament starts later this week / this weekend, so probably won't hear anything on this hire for another week or so, but there you go, guys. That's my short list.
I like it. Yeah, I think just shows that there are plenty of candidates out there that you can find somebody willing to take on even a program with not a lot of history and maybe still needing to do some work in the facilities department.
Like you said, Dust, it could be anything. It could be a boat. It's the mystery box of hiring a new head coach in a sport.
Yeah, all I could think of was you talked about recruiting the East Tennessee State University in Johnson City, Tennessee. And I don't know why, but I immediately went to Wagon Wheel, and he's just like, hey guys, have you heard this song? And like, he just plays it and he's like, see, it's a pretty cool place.
Yeah, all the junior players in Madrid and Barcelona really love Wagon Wheel.
You've never heard of many American cities. Have you ever heard of Wagon Wheel? It was mentioned in a song. Like,
Spaniards love the Great Smoky Mountains. I think that's the lesson here.
Like, it's a beautiful part of the country.
Oh, I'm sure.
All right. Well,
I think we got some football to talk about now at this point.
We sure
do it to it.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we got to start with Bobby. Though I said it, I was technically correct. He had at least one Cougar, exactly one Cougar, to be fair. That was drafted late last week. Patrick Paul, who went on Friday to the Miami Dolphins. I mean, I'll pass it to you, Bobby, but I would say Patrick Paul, in addition to being a great guy, like you were on with me when we interviewed him, I think no exaggeration, one of the best O-linemen I've ever gotten to watch put on a U of H jersey. And again, if you want to talk about guys who could have absolutely gone somewhere else and played a bigger role for maybe a better football team, but elected to stay and try to build this team into a winner, I can't think of any better examples than Patrick Paul. So I root for every U of H alum that gets to the next level, but I think pretty easy to be excited for that guy going in the first 2 rounds to what's been a pretty good NFL team here the past couple seasons.
Yeah, pretty excited that he's going to get to go to a pretty good situation. He seems, if I recall, he seemed to be pretty nimble on his feet with that offense. It's going to be good. He's going to be able to get out and run a little bit. Kind of reminds you a little bit of Holgerson's offense before Holgerson came here, back when we had back when Holgerson was Holgerson. He kind of has that kind of vibe going with McDaniel down there in Miami. So super excited for that. Super excited just for him to get drafted. You guys know this, but the listeners don't. My cousin was drafted back in 2003, and I remember being a kid at that and just how exciting it was when he got the call, and just what a great experience and and fun time that is, and just the excitement. I always like seeing people accomplish their dreams, and I would have to say we got to watch somebody accomplish their dreams. To your point, he's one of the best O linemen I've seen play at the University of Houston. I think the only other one that comes to mind who I can think of is Sebastian Vollmer. When we were students, that's the only other one I can really think of that was much that you could even say was as good or better than Patrick Paul.
Yeah, really cool for Patrick Paul, like y'all were saying. And I know, the only thing that's a little bit of a bummer is I know he had talked about wanting to get drafted in the first round and feeling like he proved himself as one of the top 32 picks. And obviously that didn't happen. Ended up going 55th overall. But I mean, still a huge accomplishment, like you were saying. And I mean, and when you get drafted, in the second round, I mean, that still means the NFL team really, really likes you and really, really expects you to be able to.
Second round picks are valuable, man.
Plans. Yeah, if you're getting picked in the second round, that means the team thinks you're going to be there for a while. You're going to be in the NFL for a while, and certainly someone as talented and as hardworking as Patrick, I think will hopefully have a long and, knock on wood, relatively healthy NFL career.
Did extremely cursory research, but it seems like way too early to tell anything about NFL rosters at this point. But seems like he's projected to back up a veteran, Terran Armstead, as the Dolphins left tackle, which not a bad place to be as a rookie. I think being starting rookie left tackle sounds nightmarishly difficult. So he might get a season or two to learn behind a veteran, which I think is a good spot to be in. And like you said, Dustin, a draft position where a team is going to you're going to have to do a lot for a team to like punt on you as a player. Like
Yep.
Getting drafted period is great. Getting drafted in the first two rounds, I think, gives you kind of at least 2-3 seasons to establish stuff with that team. So excited for that for him at the very least.
Yeah. And then in terms of the current Cougar football team, we had a couple of portal tidbits in the last few days, one in the last
few minutes, yeah.
And that is both, and they both are at the cornerback position for U of H, and that is now have learned that Jalen Emery has exited the portal, coming back to U of H, and then for the second time this offseason now, Isaiah Hamilton in the transfer portal. You may remember entered during the fall and then ended up coming back, but it looks like he's back in there. So, I think entirely possible that those two things are related to one another. Entirely possible. I think that Jalen Emery came back because, hey, all of a sudden we see a little bit more of an avenue for playing time for you with Isaiah Hamilton about to hit the portal. So, I mean, yeah, and kind of my thoughts, because we literally just after we started the podcast, did we get the news that that Isaiah Hamilton had hit the portal. And, when I was just had my notes in here for just Jalen Emery exiting the portal, coming back, I mean, that was kind of my thought process is like, hey, likely ahead of you on the depth chart at cornerback is Isaiah Hamilton, Southern transfer Chris Davis, probably Syracuse transfer Jeremiah Wilson as well. But, Hamilton, Davis, only 1 year of eligibility left. So Emery kind of thought maybe, you come back because you didn't find another school out there that was going to give you the immediate playing time you wanted to. So come back to Houston where it looks likely that you'll have a chance to be a starter next year. But yeah, if Isaiah Hamilton hits the portal, then that may be more of fighting for a starting spot this year already. So, don't love that. Isaiah Hamilton on a defense that wasn't great was one of the players that really showed some flashes and was really kind of exciting that I was really actually looking forward to having coming back next year. So definitely a bit of a bummer to lose him, but you do get then 2 years out of Jalen Emery out of it. So at least always trade-offs being made in the portal all the time.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Sam. Go ahead.
No, go for it, man.
I would prefer if we kept Isaiah Hamilton, obviously. But like I said in the last episode, those of you who listened to that, which I hope it was everyone listening to this now, but I have this weird full faith in what Coach Fritz is doing. Probably has had conversations with guys and said, look, you're going to get PT, you're not going to get PT. And so when I see somebody go in the portal, I just think that like it's not working for whatever reason. And Coach Fritz has my full support in doing what he thinks is best for the program. I do think it's a little enlightening more than we've seen other portal guys where, Fritz, he entered the portal and then it seems the staff kind of talked to him about, hey man, give us a chance. And it seems like it probably didn't work out a little bit. So I do find it interesting that Isaiah Hamilton is declaring for the portal today, putting his name in today, or at least it's coming out today. It feels like that's something he could have done a couple of weeks ago. So what does like the last week or two really look like in these discussions?
Yeah, and like you said, Dustin, I think I won't spend it. He was one of the few guys that I think did positive stuff on last year's defense that made plays that I actually enjoyed. And so anytime a guy like that leaves, it's a little bit of the bummer. I won't spend it. I'm not gonna come on here and every time some guy leaves, like, well, it's just Willie Fritz getting his guys. That's like I think the knee jerk reaction for a lot of fans, but also at the same time, there's no player that could leave this program that would make me not still very excited long term about the new staff. Like I hope, if nothing else, I hope Isaiah Hamilton finds a place where in his final year of eligibility he can play a good amount and I think show off the things he showed in flashes playing for the Cougs last year.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, as sad as we are for Isaiah Hamilton to leave, he's a guy with 1 year of eligibility left, and we are on year 0 of this coaching staff in a lot of ways. So it's like there was a limited amount he was ever going to be able to do in terms of helping a winning U of H team. As I think we all know that, this is not a team that we expect to compete for a Big 12 championship or even maybe go to a bowl game. So is Isaiah Hamilton a better player than Jalen Emery? Yeah, probably. Jalen Emery also will be
certainly
here.
Was last year, yeah.
Yeah, Jalen Emery will also be here theoretically, next season when U of H might have a little bit of chance at being a little bit more competitive in the Big 12.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think we're gonna do some quick hitter book reports on the spring sports that are still in season. So I think first up, Sam, you're gonna talk some baseball at us, right?
Sure am. The Cougs did win their designated non-Big 12 series during the conference play part of the season, taking 2 of 3 against the UT Arlington Mavericks. Is that right, Bobby?
That is correct. They are the Mavericks.
I was like 90% sure of that, but I figured I figured both of you, not to out you as as someone who knows way too many mascot stuff. So I think you both could have fact checked me that, but I just wanted to double check that one.
To be honest, when I first saw it on the schedule, I initially thought that it was an away series for U of H, and I was like, I'm gonna get to see him at UTA. Let's go.
Not so much,
because I went to a UTA baseball camp when I was a kid, so like
that was fun. I've driven by their bay. They have a nice little baseball field.
Yeah, it's fine for UTA.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Not a lot of big takeaways from playing UTA. I guess I would have liked a sweep, but not bad that neither of the wins here are really in doubt. Wanted to shout out one guy though, Carrie Arboleda, homered twice in both of the homered 2 times each in both of the Cougar wins in this one. Couple nice, I think, stories / frustrating things about the season is that I don't think any of us before the year anticipated that Harold Call and Carrie Arboleda would have the seasons they're having. Mm-hmm. They're both OPSing over 1,000 with double-digit home runs, and I think a pretty decent number of at-bats. At this point, I thought I would have thought if those 2 guys were giving you that, plus Justin Murray still being a positive, plus Jonathan French coming as a grad transfer and hitting for power, that the offense would have been better. Not that that's been, I think, this team's biggest problem. But really, more importantly, up next, the Cougars will be hosting McNeese tomorrow night at Schrader Park. That should be a Cougar win given how the Cowboys have struggled this season. But I think more importantly, on the weekend, the Cougs will have a familiar face in Big 12 play, the UCF Knights. On the balance, the Knights are having a better current season than the Cougars under first-year head coach and program alum Rich Wallace, but hasn't been going as well lately for them. They're 1-5 in their last 2 Big 12 series, including dropping 2 of 3 at home this past weekend to Cincy. At this point, if the Cougars want to keep any hope of alive of finishing the season strong and not missing the cut line to make the Big 12 tournament, they need to be really heaping the misery on the Knights. We'll say they're 2-7 in Big 12 games away from Orlando this year, so it's possible, but obviously it hasn't happened consistently enough at times for this Cougar team. So that's my very quick book report of what Cougar baseball's been up to lately. Bobby, I assume I'm passing it off to you for softball.
Yeah, it works for me. If we're going to talk bat and ball sports, let's go ahead and move to the second one. So Lady Cougars hosted the Red Raiders from Texas Tech. Are they called the Lady Raiders? Do y'all have any idea?
They are. I double checked this because I did some softball notes. They are the Lady Raiders. That is their name.
So they hosted the Lady Raiders from Texas Tech. The Cougs did avoid the sweep, which was actually kind of exciting. I was really excited that we avoided that sweep on the Saturday game. Actually, run-rolled Texas Tech. The problem is the weekend was bookended with a 7-6 loss on Friday and a 5-2 loss on Sunday. Cougs give up 7-5 runs. Not usually going to win you many softball games when you do that. I'm not going to say much more. Once again, Cougar softball bats are hot. They can put runs on the board, but just can't get the success in the circle that we've kind of been asking for all year. And then quickly, the Cougars are currently playing Sam Houston, and it is middle of the third. U of H is up 11-0 on Sam. So if that ends up being a Cougar loss when you listen to this tomorrow, we can cry or we can celebrate the fact that the Cougs may actually grab the dub in that game. Dustin, track?
All right, let's talk some track and field. The Cougars competed at the historic Penn Relays this past weekend, one of the notable events of the NCAA outdoor track and field season. One of the highlights, the women's 4x4 relay continued its extremely exciting season. They did well in indoors, continuing to do well in outdoors. They actually broke their program record in the prelims and then broke that record in the finals, winning the finals with a time of 3 minutes, 27.32 seconds. The winning quartet made up of Sydney Townsend, Amon Babineau, Kellyanne Beckford, and Michaela Mouton. And then another highlight, Devian Wilson won the 110 hurdles with a time of 13.38 seconds. That's the fifth fastest time in Penn Relay's history and the current number 6 mark nationally this year. Kind of a breakout star. A couple of youngsters that had some kind of breakout weekends. Sophomore Louis Hinchcliffe won the 100 meters for Houston with a time of 10.21 seconds. Actually finished just ahead of Sean Maswanganyi. That was Hinchcliffe's best time this year. And then an athlete that actually didn't go up to Pennsylvania, that stayed here in Texas, in Austin, in fact, for the Texas Invitational, a freshman, Andrea Mita, men's high jumper, cleared 7 foot 1.5 inches to win that event up in Austin. He's now number 17 on the national list. Pretty good for a freshman. So an event that Houston really hasn't had any success in the high jump in recent years. So would be very exciting if Mita is someone who is going to, maybe be a conference point scoring competitor this year and maybe a national point scoring competitor down the road, perhaps. Hopefully I'm not too far ahead, jumping out ahead of my skis based on one performance, but excited about what the freshman showed us in Austin. And another guy that didn't go to Pennsylvania that went to Austin as well was someone that we do know well about, and that's Christian Sampe, the pole vaulter, who all he did up in Austin was clear 18 feet, 6.5 inches, breaking his own school record. That is the current number 4 mark in the country. So continues to be I think, pretty exciting overall outdoor season for Cougar track and field.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like we've been almost 9 seasons kind of waiting for a really standout like women's season. It's not like on the level of some of the just absurd seasons we had maybe like back in season 4 or 5, but Dustin, it really feels like we're starting to get some like consistent high level performances on that side that maybe we haven't seen in any of our prior seasons, which I think is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, even the men have generally been at least kind of point scoring at nationals, and to see the women kind of get to that level as well, where, you had the 4x4 score at indoor nationals. Looks like it'll be a group that can score at outdoors, and you got some individuals as well on the women's side that hopefully can score you some points. So excited to see excited to see that program hopefully continue to take steps forward in the Big 12.
So we'll get to our main topic. I'm sorry, Bobby. Go.
Oh no, I was just gonna say it's super exciting to see U of H do so well at the Penn Relays. Listening to you guys over the last 9 seasons, 8 seasons, 9 seasons, whatever it is, learning more about track kind of as you guys have, but you guys being a little bit better at it, obviously, because you have done the podcast. I do know how important the Penn Relays are, so super excited to see us do well at that.
Yeah, cool historical event.
Yeah.
Yeah, get to our main topic tonight. Many of you, I'm always humbled and surprised by how many of y'all want us to answer your questions about the Cougars. So, number of y'all submitted questions. We are going to get to them in no specific order. I think we, in one case at least, combined some extremely similar questions to one topic. I'm going to start with that one, actually. A couple of y'all asked about the men's basketball scholarship situation. So, David asked us, quote, "My understanding is that the basketball team has one too many scholarship players for next year. Does this mean someone else has to transfer? can NIL dollar cover tuition for a player not on scholarship? Is it possible they add someone else? And also, Cougs vs. Everybody asked, for UH basketball, how do you think the scholarship situation is going to conclude with 14 scholarship players on the roster currently? Dustin, you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I think the answer to a couple of these questions is my understanding is yes, that it is possible to have a someone who is officially a walk on and just kind of have NIL money cover their scholarship. I think it's entirely possible that is baked into the $1 million push for NIL that we've seen this offseason, the Run It Back campaign. So yeah, I mean, no less than Joseph Duarte, I think at one point did a Q&A column where he kind of intimated that Malik Wilson was going to be leaving, and then all of a sudden Malik Wilson says, no, I'm coming back, which was what led us to this. Oh, okay, where does the extra scholarship come from? So as of yet, we haven't seen anyone depart. We could see maybe tomorrow we'll see Sedlot or somebody will hit the portal. Hopefully not. And all of a sudden, okay, that kind of answers your how do we get down to 13 scholarships question. I saw someone else. One of the questions part of it was is it possible they add someone else? I would be really surprised at this point when
me too.
You just don't really see them being linked to anybody seriously. I think either you would need to have someone leave and have someone go as a walk on, or have two someone's leave, or something like that to get another scholarship in. So it seems unlikely. It'd be real surprised if we see anybody besides Milos Uzan coming in this off season. In terms of the portal. But my guess at this point is I kind of think that maybe Malik or somebody is going to be officially a walk-on and do the NIL thing for their scholarship money. But maybe that's me being a little optimistic and not wanting to lose any of the players on the roster currently. But my guess is that one of those two things, either we just see them rolling with the 14 and we kind of learn quietly later at some point that, oh yeah, so-and-so wasn't officially on scholarship this year, or we just see someone from the kind of the end of the bench maybe hit the portal and then roll with the official 13.
Yeah, the only person I've seen linked to the Cougs still is Mercy Miller's brother, who's transferring, but he was a walk-on at his last school. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see him kind of join, get to play with his brother. I also wouldn't be surprised. Mercy Miller's family, as we know, has a decent amount of money. As we, I don't want to assume 100%, but I can put two and two together, and
you don't have intimate knowledges of masterpiece, finances,
net worth, yeah. But maybe that's a solution somewhere along the lines. That's kind of what I'm thinking. If we're keeping everybody, but I think the most logical thing, to your point, Dustin, is that somebody just isn't with us that we expect to be with us as of now. But I do think it's possible. I wouldn't be surprised if we pulled it off and, Mercy went walk-on status with a promise to get a scholarship next year or something like that.
Or his offer being hey, you were going to be on this team and likely play at least some role as a freshman, but your dad can afford U of H out of state tuition for the 24-25 academic year. I don't complete speculation. That is not me saying that
absolutely.
We know that's the case. I would say I think I'm most confident about it. And I think you both agree is that I really do think the staff is done adding. I really don't think unless we see a bunch of guys unexpectedly hit the portal between now and the summer that you're really going to see U of H add out, outside of Uzan. I think this is really going to be what the roster looks like, knock on wood, come fall practices. Yeah. So our next question, Bobby, it's a simple one from Renee. Ideal U of H football non-conference schedule. What's your ideal non-conference schedule, bud?
Okay, so am I supposed to give did you guys do specific teams, or did you do a type of team?
However you want to answer. Honestly, I think both are acceptable in my opinion. Maybe some specifics in there, but
I'm gonna go 3, right? 3 out of 3 non-conference games. I'm gonna go I want a G5 school. I'm okay making it Rice on a yearly basis. Just because it's in the city. I know how Dustin feels about this after the last game where he's like, they don't bring anything, they don't bring fans or anything like that. I think I do that.
Not wrong, by the way.
Maybe I keep them in, rotate them with Sam. Now that Sam has kind of moved up, I kind of do that level. I am not a fan of going FCS because FCS, it always feels like you schedule an FCS team and then like 8 years later they're an FCS powerhouse and you're going, oh no, like this team could actually legitimately beat us. But maybe I think I go lower tier G5, then I go an in-state non-conference rival, right? Maybe you can go somebody like a Texas or Texas A&M. That's again dream scenario, not that it's going to happen. And then a fun roadie, right? I know we have Oregon State on the schedule, and one of the things I've wanted to do is they have like Bandon Dunes, and it's like a mecca for golf. And 3 hours from Beaverton or wherever they play. Why did I say Beaverton? Corvallis. Why did I say Beaverton? I feel like that's something that I made up on like.
No, that's a real Oregon Oregon town, but not where Oregon State is.
Yeah. Maybe it's because they're the Beavers. I don't know. But and then like a fun road trip, something like that. So I'd go do Bandon, and then it's 3 hours away from Corvallis. So you go play golf all week, and then I would drive up to Corvallis on Saturday, fly out Sunday, back to work on Monday, like something like that. So a fun road trip, an in-state rival, and then a local FCS or local G5 team.
Dustin, what about you?
All right, so I've gotten kind of specific. So I have three. So you got the 3 games to play with. I want 1 game to be against the power conference team. So you're just doing home. You're out there scheduling home and homes. So you got your power conference team for 1 spot. For a second spot, I want to just rotate various G5s in the area in Texas or nearby that you're doing 2-for-1s with. So you've got a spot that might be UTSA 1 year, it might be Texas State, it might be North Texas, it might be Tulane. And then your third spot, I want every other year do the Bayou Bucket. Every other year, just do a home and home with a wild card, someone that's maybe like a higher tier G5 that deserves better than a 2-for-1, like a Boise or an Oregon State or a Washington State, or someone actually a little bit more, that is maybe a G5 but still kind of actually gets people's eyebrows raised a little bit, something like that.
So I kept my 3 general. One of those is just opponent that offers a cool road trip. Like I know that's very vague. I would generally like that to be a decent team too, like a Boise, like an Oregon State. I mean, even though Oregon State's future is kind of murky, like I enjoy maybe every other year doing like a decent length road trip. Guys, with UH in the Big 12, I just want one of these to be an easy fucking win. Like honestly, whether that's FCS or whether that's perennially bad FBS team, don't care. Would like to just have a +1 win baked into the schedule. Like okay, FIU is probably going to be a win. So that's my number. So cool road trip, easy win, whether that's FBS or bad FBS. And then number 3, I would like it to be like the Bayou Bucket every other year and Texas or in the region G5. I don't think the Bayou Bucket needs to be an every year game, but I would hate for it not to exist. Like I still think the game should be played in 10 years. It should be played at least like 5 or 6 times. So have that. I think basically cribbing off you, Dustin, have that be Rice or Texas State or UNT or Tulane or La Tech if they get their shit together a little bit more football wise. So that's my 3. And I think I would answer this very differently 5 years ago as a fan of a team that was in the group of 5. You're getting something different out of that 3 to 4 game non-conference than you are now, where it's just like, I don't want U of H to play just three body bags every year, but also at the same time, just like,
I need a body bag.
We need something to make 6 wins, not just like a laughable impossibility every season. So answer that.
I think it's kind of funny. We all kind of said about the same things. You get my road trip with Sam, the G5 FCS, like kind of interesting that we're all kind of on the same wavelength. I think generally we all were kind of in agreement there. And to be fair, just to let everyone know, we did not discuss our answers before this. No. I have no idea how these guys are going to answer.
I would say that's probably like that answer would probably be like one a number of U of H fans give. Not to say I have
No.
necessarily the most popular opinion, but I guarantee we are not on an island with how we feel about
No.
this.
No.
So sticking with football here for a little bit, and ask a question from our 10-12 brethren at K-State 10-12 brethren, more specifically Bosco's boys. His question was, what is your way too early prediction for what the Cougs record, by the way, extra points for COOGS, because I feel like so many people, I just see the COUGS. We are not the Cougs. We're the Cougs with 2 U's. Never mind how the word Cougar is actually spelled. What the Cougs record will be when K-State comes to town on the 2nd of November. I will take this one. I hope it'll be better, because even being a little optimistic, I think U of H will be a team with a losing record when K-State, a very difficult looking K-State team, comes to town. But my exact prediction is the Cougs will be sitting at 3-5. I will show my work here for you guys. That's assuming wins over UNLV and Rice in non-conference, which are home games, but by no means gimmies. And believe it or not, I actually think the Cougs will take one of two from the Cincy Iowa State portion of the schedule. Don't ask me why I'm confident about that. That is just my irrational preseason confidence. And those are your 3 wins. I think there might also be 1 or 2 in the games after K-State, but that might even be optimistic. 3-5 is my official prediction. Guys, have I mentioned how brutal the 2024 schedule looks for the football team? What do y'all think if you have answers to that one?
I also had 3-5, very similar. I almost identical to you. I had 3-5 wins over UNLV and Rice, and I just had somebody in the Big 12. I don't know who. As of today, I think Houston would be the underdog in all 5 of those games leading to the K-State game in Big 12 play. But I'm just going to say Willie Fritz manages to sneak one of those for us.
So I'll be the negative Nelly here. I will go with 2 wins. And that's giving UNLV and Rice, just like you guys said. But I could also see us losing to UNLV if I'm being 100% honest. But I think if we lose to UNLV, we get Cincy. I don't know why I feel that, but it just feels to me like, I think last year you could make the argument that UNLV was a better team than Cincy. But I could see us beating. I could see us beating UNLV. If we beat UNLV, I'm okay with the idea of 3. Like, I could get behind that, but I don't know for sure if we'll beat UNLV, but we may be able to beat Cincy. So I'm going to go 2 wins. I'll be the negative Nelly here.
There we go. All right. Our good friend Sean has a question for us. He asks, the DFW alumni group has football and basketball head coaches coming next week along with Pesman. Plug. If you are a U of H alumnus or alumna in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, what question would you ask each of them, Pesman and the football and men's basketball coaches, if given the opportunity? Bobby, what would you ask Willie Fritz, Kelvin Sampson, and Chris Pesman if you so got an audience with them?
So, funny thing, I'll be at this event. If you want to meet 1/3 of the podcast, you can be there. I will be there. I probably won't ask these questions because I, at these things, just kind of like to lay low. So I will start with Pesman. And obviously I wouldn't ask him this question in public. Like, I know that's the spirit of the question, but I would literally just want to know, like, if I could be in his office and just ask him a question and be like, what's it going to take for us to get a new women's basketball coach? Like, what do we got to do? Like, what's it going to take? Like, how do we get a dozen years? Like, what's the criteria that you're judging this on? So that would be my question for Pesman. And it would be specific to women's basketball. It wouldn't be like, hey, what do we got to do on a non-revenue coach? No, it would be women's basketball, because I love women's basketball that much. And not just because of its resurgence this year. I went to a ton of games.
Before anyone thinks you're a Johnny-come-lately women's basketball fan.
It is not that at all. I want to know what it's going to take. Okay. With Sampson, I'd ask him a question we got asked that we talked about earlier. How are we going to handle the 14? Like, how are we handling the extra scholarship? How's that gonna go down? Like, are we going, what's that going to look like? And then my question for Willie Fritz is, how many hands does it take to catch a football? No, in all seriousness.
I was gonna make a joke about that. I was like, what, you don't want to be the modern version of the purple jacket guy and ask a weird, uncomfortable question in public as an older alumni, but sorry.
No, my question for Coach Fritz is just going to be, what does your offense look like? What is you've shown that you've been able to adapt your offense everywhere you've been, kind of to the talent that kind of surrounds that you have, right? His offense is his Sam Houston offense kind of looks pretty different from his Tulane offense. He's shown he's willing to to adapt and change. What's it going to look like? Are we going to look more like the kind of option that he ran at Sam Houston? Are we going to be a little bit more of what he did, where he used his backs quite a bit at Tulane, and he didn't come out in I formation or anything like that, but he definitely used his backs more than he did in other places, and less reliant on the quarterback to make those runs and things like that. Not saying that they didn't, but I'm just curious what his offense is going to look like and how worried. I know I said earlier that I'm not worried about this, but I'm going to turn this into two questions. What did your initial belief in the roster? Are you concerned with these transfers? Was this more losses than you expected? Was this less losses than you expected? Is it right about where you were? So those would kind of be the two questions that I'm most curious about.
Dustin.
Yeah, so I tried to ask questions that would be kind of challenging and kind of maybe assuming that I would get a slightly more honest answer than you would at an open press conference or something like that. So the first one's going to sound kind of similar to Bobby's. For Chris Pesman, how do you justify bringing back for year 11 a coach who has never made the NCAA tournament? And if that is a contract issue, how do you justify giving him that contract in the first place? For Kelvin Sampson, this offseason specifically, to what extent are you going to emphasize becoming a better first shot team offensively?
That's a great question.
This is Houston last year had the third worst effective field goal percentage of Sampson's 10-year run, 10-year tenure at U of H. And with a lot of guys back, I think maybe the defense and the rebounding, the culture is already established a little bit more than it would be with an average team. So do you have something else to do in terms of getting a little bit better first shot offensively? And then Willie Fritz, what is your truth serum, no BS answer? How scared are you about Houston's offensive line going up against the teams that you're going up against this year? Because that position unit does not make me feel overflowing with confidence, I got to say.
Little foreshadowing for another question we have a little bit later in this Q&A. I tried to go for, again, my interpretation was questions that I believe they wouldn't, and this is not a knock on any of the three men, but they wouldn't coach speak me, or in Kelvin Sampson's case, just kind of give me a slightly politer version. That's a dumb fucking question. Like, don't ask. I tried to ask something that I think I would get an answer about and wouldn't get any kind of coach speak for. So for Fritz, I would just ask him, what was the most important reason you ultimately elected to take the challenge of the head coaching job at U of H? For Sampson, this is the one I thought of the most, and this is the one I'm proudest of, though I don't think it's as good as your question, Dustin. I would ask him, what have you learned about yourself as a person from coaching each of the last three starting point guards in the program, Galen Robinson, Deke Giroux, and Jamal Shed? And for Pesman, I didn't go as specific as you guys, but I think I had asked along the same lines. My question for Pesman was, how do you believe you can create a winning culture in this athletic department when multiple non-football head coaches are on historic postseason droughts for their program? So those are my three questions. I'm interested in I liked the different directions that y'all went, and would encourage any of y'all that are near DFW to go to this event that Bobby will be at here in the coming week. Moving along, I think this is a good transition. I didn't know this would transition as well as it did, but Third Ward Cougar asks, as the Cougars move on from the tennis coach, how close are we to moving on from the women's basketball staff? Dustin, kick us off.
Next year, one more year.
There we go. I was gonna say that's pretty much the answer there. I don't want to give Chris Wesson too much credit, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we saw him get rid of Helena Bezovic when her contract expired. Ron Huey's contract expires at the end of this coming year. I think it's extremely unfortunate that we weren't willing to spend a little bit of money to buy him out of 1 year of a contract. But I think regardless, he's going to be coming up to his contract will be expired next year, and I sure hope that I'm wrong about this, but I feel pretty confident in saying he is going to, at that point, be on an 11-year drought of having never made the NCAA tournament. So I think even Pesman at that point will realize and be willing to make a move. So I'm going to say 1 more year.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's 1 more year, unless we have a season that none of us are expecting next year. But to be honest, to answer the question, I don't know what it's going to take. The question is how close are we, or what's it going to take to get it to move on? I don't know anymore. I thought not making the tournament for 9 years was the answer. And then I was like, oh, not making the tournament for a decade is the answer. It's clearly not. So I don't have a good answer. The only thing I can think of is that they're making the argument that he was the last one out, and that kind of counts as a tournament year because they expanded the tournament the next year. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm just saying that's kind of what I like see happening.
Yeah, I don't want to give Chris Pesman too much credit on this, but I'm with Dustin here. I think it'll be after the season. I'm pretty confident, especially with the decision to not bring back Bezovic in tennis. I think that tells you like they're gonna let him finish out his deal, but I really don't think they're gonna extend. Willing to admit I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty confident with Dustin on this one. All right, to another thing we just mentioned a moment ago, a 2-part question from our friend in 1012 impresario Philip. He asks, 1, how are we feeling about the offensive line for the coming season? And 2, which stickball team needs the most work this offseason? So I will take part 2, Bobby. I will throw to you, or part 1, and I will throw to you, Bobby, for part 2. Part 1, not great, Philip. Don't feel great. To be clear, this isn't any kind of real criticism of Willie Fritz and the staff. And I wasn't exactly wild about our O-line play last year outside of Patrick Paul and then maybe sometimes Jack Freeman and Tyler Johnson. But you wouldn't be honestly looking at this roster in the lead up to next season if you didn't know that the offensive line is a big question mark. You have Tank Jenkins back. He started some of the last 3 seasons, is back for his final college season, but was never one of your better performing linemen in any of those seasons. Not that he can't improve, new system, better fit, et cetera, but we'll note that it hasn't happened yet for him in his college career. Demetrius Hunter, one of the last half's biggest high school recruiting gets, should slot in at center, replacing Jack Freeman, which I'm excited about. Take it for what it's worth, but the starting tackles in the spring game were the guys who were the backups at the positions the majority of last year, David Ndukwe at left tackle and Shamar Habdi-Lee at right tackle. I was more surprised by redshirt freshman Caden Bowie starting at the left guard spot opposite of Jenkins, but obviously we'll see if that's the lineup here in 4 months' time. And you did bring in some veteran transfers, Jake Wiley, who played at UCLA in Colorado, Dakota White, who played for La Tech, and Cedric Melton for Ole Miss. Would be mildly surprised if at least one of that trio isn't a starter. There are 10 O-linemen on the spring roster with 4 signees projected to enroll over the summer, so not bad for total numbers, but I don't know. I like everything involving the offense. I think the line is going to benefit from a more coherent scheme and Dana not being involved, but I mean, it's still a big question. All your top performers from a not very good line last year are gone, and the replacements are mostly guys who are unproven at the Division I level, or at least at this level of Division I football. At least, guys, you want to add anything to that?
Go ahead, Dustin.
I was gonna say my entire note was I'm feeling very scared. And I was just, but yeah, no. The other thing I was says, you kind of look at the roster and the offensive line specifically. I feel like we have a bunch of depth options. I have a bunch of guys who go, yeah, he's a good depth guy. You'd want him coming off of providing depth. Or go, oh right, that's the entire line. You gotta find 5 starters out of that,
you gotta
and more.
You can't just be depth.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't feel great.
Yeah, I'm not excited about it. It is. I thought at the spring game the O-line looked pretty good. At the red and white game, kind of watching it, I thought they looked okay. I realized I just went from pretty good to okay. Those are pretty much the same to me. I thought they were fine. I don't know what it's going to look like with a more mobile quarterback, a quarterback who can run. As soon as those guys broke tackles in the spring game, they pretty much called them down. Maybe you need just enough time to break some receivers open, and if your quarterback can help you out there a little bit, maybe I feel a little less scared. But go ahead, Dustin.
I was just going to say, shameless plug. Just today in the prep for this episode, I went and completely updated our football scholarship grid, which is available to our Patreon supporters. So if you are a patron, if you go to our Patreon page, I literally just posted the link about an hour or 2 ago with the updated list. Just absolutely very in-depth depth chart at every position for the U of H football team. So enjoy that and figure out just how nervous you should be about our offensive line situation.
Patreon.com/SH podcast. Bobby, part 2. What stickball team needs the most work in the offseason?
Softball. I mean, I can hear an argument on baseball. You can tell me, but going into the season, I could at least see what we were trying to accomplish in baseball. I could see the talent coming in and going, okay, they were pretty good, maybe hampered by injuries a little bit. We looked to build a really nice lineup. The pitching staff looked pretty good. Like I said, a lot of talent there that you could see succeeding. Maybe they were successful at a lower level. Maybe they were successful at an SEC school and then got injured and they came over, and you can see the talent is there. You could see how we were building the roster. Softball, anyone who's watched softball for a year and has looked at any kind of stats with softball would know that this team was in trouble. You knew this team was in trouble with this pitching staff. We were bringing in players who weren't necessarily successful at lower levels. They weren't lighting it up at lower levels, and we were bringing them in, and I wasn't sure why. We said it going into the season, all three of us. The coaching staff has forgotten more about softball than we could ever know, but also at the same time, I was well aware that right there was not going to work in the Big 12, and here it is. It hasn't worked. So that's why I say softball. Baseball, again, I could see what we were trying to do in terms of building the program, doing all that kind of stuff. But with softball, I couldn't see it. And it was kind of one of those, put your faith in that maybe coaching staff knows what they're doing and they saw something, because, I'm not watching UT Arlington softball tape, right? They kind of looked at things and it's just like, let's see what happens. And it went exactly as we thought, and we're not Division I softball coaches.
Yeah, I went softball too in that one, just for the same reason that they're just so far from being even remotely good in terms of the pitching staff. And that's basically been the same problem for the last, 3, 4, 5 years at this point. It's just not bringing in the arms and not developing the arms to have an even halfway decent pitching staff. And the other reason that I think that, the question specifically is which stickball team needs the most work this
I know you're going with this. I'm glad you are. Yeah.
The baseball team is not going to be making a coaching change this offseason because they just signed Todd Whitting to a 3-year extension at the beginning of this year. Kristen Vesely's contract expires at the end of this year. We've already seen what happens when you finish DFL in the Big 12 and it's your contract season. I'd like to think Pesman is gonna be smart enough to make a move here as well. So I think softball has more work to do because they'll be hiring a new coach, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think you guys both covered it pretty well. The baseball team, not that it's had the best season. I think they're actually more underperforming what's on the roster versus softball. But there are pitchers where you could be like, oh yeah, Cade Satellia has kind of figured out how to harness the occasional swing and miss stuff he had into actual multi-inning outings. Justin Murray continues to be a good relief pitcher, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas softball has one thing that is far more deficient than anything that baseball has. And like you said, Dustin, like, good chance on an expiring contract. Don't want to give the AD too much credit here that U of H will probably make it. Just everything about the roster build this year, now that you look at it with some hindsight, kind of scream like, fairly inexperienced Division I assistants, roster of mostly athletes who are a year away from their college eligibility being done. Felt very much like the staff hoping they caught Kristen Vesely, more specifically hoping they catch lightning in a bottle this year. So yeah, expect that to have different leadership. All right, guys, 2 more questions. I will take the one that I'm sure is Bobby's absolute favorite first year. Hypothetical from ABB. If the band gets 10 songs in a game, how many times do you want to hear the horse versus Womp Womp? I will answer this one to start. I enjoy the horse a lot. Love me a good square clap during the horse. You two, as 2 of my closest friends who have been with me at many U of H games, know this quite well. I know at least one of you, maybe both, are fellow enthusiasts with me as well. But I want a 2-to-1 ratio of Womp Womp to the horse during the game. Again, I love the horse. I think you should play that once during the pregame and then maybe once or twice during the game, during maybe like a high energy point in the game, like during a commercial, like after a big turnover or a big touchdown or something like that. So guys, if I'm apportioning out 10 non-fight songs / alma mater songs to the band during a game, it would go as follows. You ready? We're saying 4 playings of Womp Womp, 2 playings of the horse, and then 2 miscellaneous. That is That is my way too detailed answer to this question. What do you guys think, Bobby?
Yeah, that's
I think
your
you need
math.
2 more songs to get to 10.
Yeah, you need 2 more songs, buddy.
Man, I am not being the charges of.
I love how Dustin and I were both like, "Wait a minute, did I
doing
not
that.
carry a 1 somewhere?"
We're gonna reapportion this. I'm gonna say 5 womp womp, 2 the horse, 3 miscellaneous. That is actually 10. I'm not helping U of H grads beat the these people could get anywhere else charge just with my big time math fuck up there.
We helped it though. It was 2 to 1.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had the ratio part, but clearly couldn't count up to 10. Bobby, I know you love some Spirit of Houston talk. What do you think about this one, bud?
9 to 1 womp womp to horse.
Wow.
That's it? They're not, are they playing any other songs or no?
No,
That's
he just
fair
wants. He just
I
wants.
guess not. Okay,
womp-
fair enough.
I am so sorry, guys. I don't know what's happening with my internet tonight.
That's all. That's all Bobby wants.
Fair enough.
No, it's my answer was 9 womp womps to 1 horse. Like, give me all the womp womp. And I know we created the horse and like we wrote it, and it's our. Give me all the womp womp. Nothing fires up our fans like womp womp.
I agree, but I think you need to be a little bit more. You can't if you use it every single commercial break, it loses its I think specialness. So I want to hear the horse twice. Once first half, once second half. And I want to hear womp womp 2 to 3 times. I need to hear it right as the game's getting going because it gets everyone fired up. I want to hear it right as we're coming out of halftime because it's going to get everybody fired back up for the second half. And then if you've got a close competitive game, then you've got it once in your back pocket that at some point on the stretch, you're going to drop it at the other team is calling a timeout and looking a little threatened. And all of a sudden the crowd's going crazy. You want to keep the momentum going through the halftime. You play womp womp. Everyone stays fired up. 3 womp womps, 2 horses, 5, whatever else you want to play.
I wanted to add also, I should have said this during when I answer it, but I've enjoyed the arrangement they do of Every Day of Hustling. They have a good arrangement that they do of that.
Yes,
I mean, I like when they play the actual song, but they do a good arrangement of that too. Yeah, exactly. Have one of those coming out in the third quarter, especially.
I think. Okay, I'll change my answer because that's a really good point. I didn't even think about the hustling one. I gotta go 6, 2, and 2 there. I think it may go 6, 3, 1. But I'm thinking 6, 2, 2.
You don't want any of the horse after the H suddenly appears. You're after the H suddenly appears, you're no more horse for me. I don't like it. All right. Last but not least,
that's the worst bit. I'm sorry.
2 questions left. Do we not have the which sport we're going to add and what is a successful year under Willie Fritz?
Oh, I forgot the successful year under Willie Fritz. I was gonna close with the one sport, but I guess we got 2 more. From Renee, a question I think we answer annually, but I still enjoy as an exercise. He asks, "What sport would y'all want to see U of H add / sponsor?" I vote D1 ice hockey. Bobby, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, he answered D1 ice hockey because that's the right answer. It's the answer that it should be. It's that or gymnastics. I vote hockey, but I think those are the 2 that I would make the argument for. Now, how good would the U of H hockey team be? Great question. I don't know if you come in and you start recruiting to the city of Houston. I don't know if it's as exciting to play hockey in Houston, if that makes sense.
I have something for this, but Dustin, you answer the question.
I think that there's 3 answers. Ice hockey is the dream money is no object scenario because it would require someone with tons of money coming in and being
yes,
I'm going to bankroll this thing on a massive level. So I'd be thrilled.
We couldn't get the Coyotes to move, so now I want to have hockey at U of H.
Right. I'd be thrilled, but I'm not holding my breath. Gymnastics is the no-brainer. It's already a Big 12 sponsored event, and Simone Biles has famously said that she would consider coaching at U of H once her career as an athlete is over if U of H were to ever add gymnastics. But we've got a dark horse here, and that's wrestling. It's another sport that the Big 12 sponsors. It's a sport that the Big 12 is pretty serious at. Iowa State and Oklahoma State are major national powers. I think it's a sport that, yes, there's a barrier to entry, but it's not massively high the way that hockey is. So I think if you are going to invest enough in a program to be successful, I would totally watch a U of H wrestling team.
I knew he'd be able to slip an Iowa State reference in here.
As soon
as he said wrestling, I was like, Iowa State.
This MFer is going to talk about Iowa State.
I was just going to add, like I also have ice hockey and gymnastics. I would say the only original thought that hasn't been covered by you two is I really don't think Houston being a warm weather city is a major disadvantage here, provided you hire credible coaching staff and have serious investment in the program. I know your major recruiting base is mostly prospective players in Canada and Northern USA, but I don't think you'd struggle to find guys, again, with appropriate investment and a staff that's credible in terms of developing players, that, guys who would mind living in a warm weather climate after spending nearly all of their lives in a place that's bitterly cold. Like,
I think my argument wasn't necessarily that
I
it's
so
a
many pro
warm
players
weather.
live in Vegas and
Yeah,
Scottsdale, man.
yeah.
Like,
It wasn't
or
like
Florida.
that they wouldn't want to move to a warm weather place. It's just like, hey, you can come play at Houston, or you can play in Massachusetts in the Beanpot tournament that gets covered by the regional sports.
Yeah, I mean, you're
network
not
up
winning
there. It's
head to
like,
head
well,
recruiting
yeah,
battles against fucking Boston University, man. But like, I don't know. I think you get like a decent level of player, like someone who the again, you may also like your market efficiency might also be like more European prospects than Canadian, because
yeah.
fairly international state. It's just my thought there. Also beach volleyball. Beach volleyball is one that I haven't heard
Beach
mentioned that
volleyball would
I
be
think
cool.
would be a good one, and I think kind of fits the region of the country where U of H is in. Wouldn't require like a real insane investment of that you don't already have in the program. Like I think beach volleyball would be good. You might even have like athletes I don't know enough about beach volleyball to
We
say
have
this,
a
but
we have a volleyball court at Cullen Oaks when I live there.
isn't there one on like
Cambridge Oaks.
the south side of the rec too? You could just like kind
Yeah,
of
there's like I think they have like two over there. At least when we were in school a decade ago.
yeah, right. All right. Our final question, which I missed the first time, another one from Bosco's Boys, asks a good one here. I like the bit of also, you'll hear the bit here in a second. Quote, what would be considered a successful year one under Kansas native Willie Fritz? What would be considered a failure in year one under Kansas native Willie Fritz? I love a good bit like that. So appreciate them doubling down on him being a Kansas native. Bobby, successful year one, failure year one, go.
All right. So for me, I don't know if Willie Fritz can fail, right? Like if he goes winless, maybe that's a fail, and I'm disappointed in that. But overall, if we very well could go 4-8 this year, and we would be the if we're more competitive, that's successful to me. I think that if we are at least competing in games, when you think about our wins, they were close games, right? It was the Hail Mary, it was going for two in overtime. Those are two games that you could lose this year, but if you're playing closer in more games, I think that's what I'm looking for successfully this year. I was telling my wife that this team could go 4-8 again and actually look better as long as they're more competitive. It's going to be another long year for the Cougs in terms of win losses, but I think if we just look like we kind of know more what we're doing on the field, I think that's what success looks like to me.
Yeah, I have actually a pretty similar answer. A successful season to me is beat Rice, win at least one Big 12 game, and look competitive in most of your games. We said before, I don't think it was necessarily, and kind of like you said, Bobby, I don't know that it was 4-8 that got Dana Holgorsen fired. It was 4-8 where you got thumped by TCU, thumped by Texas Tech, brutalized by K-State, and then even Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, UCF, 3 games on the stretch. I think they all finished up technically only 2-score games, but there was just really never any doubt in the fourth quarter of any of those games that Houston did not have what it took to be competitive and win those games. So, I think, beat Rice, play competitively in like 8 or 9 of your games at least, win a game. And I think Houston could go 3-9 this year and have a better team because they're playing a tougher schedule and still actually feel like they made progress in the correct direction.
Yeah, I think honestly just be more competitive. That's a successful season because this is a brutally difficult schedule the Cougs are about to be facing. I think I'm kind of in a position that I don't know if there's a realistic scenario that's a failure to me. I would say over. If you go over this season, any over season, no matter the circumstances, is a failure. Do I think they should? God forbid this is a scenario that actually bears out in reality. Should they fire Fritz after going over? No. But like that, that would be the one even hypothetical outcome that would be a failure to me. It's a low expectations year. I know people like to say year zero doesn't exist. I think year zero doesn't exist for the 25, 30 most moneyed programs in the country with the portal and the ability to openly spend with NIL. It definitely exists in some cases still, like contrary to popular belief. All right, Dusty, you want to take us home?
Absolutely. On our way out, just want to encourage all of you, as we said at the top, patreon.com/SH podcast. If you feel like you can afford $5 a month. If you can't do $5 a month, do us 5 stars and leave us a 5-star review in your app of choice. That would be very much appreciated as well. If you want to get in contact with us, you can email us, shpodcast@gmail.com, or you can tweet at us at shpodcast, or you can blue sky at us at podcast.bsky.social. That's it for us. If you made it all the way to the end, you're an absolute rock star. And as always,
go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
Vamos los Cougs.
Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
All right. Go Cougs. Let's go.